What the hell, Lawbries and Gentlegrams? In today's episode of Lawbry and Gentleland, the phony Tony Montana, Taylor Swift, Tyra Banks twin, the Celine Dion of defamation, the Zac Efron of hip-hop's High School Musical, the Teenage Fever Mutant Turtle, Toronto's Trial Tribunal, Tool, La Brianna, the Marilyn Monroe v. Ho, Akademiks defamation daddy, dare I say, might have seen things move slightly in his favor in this ludicrous lawsuit, looping in Lucian Grange, because today, both Drake's lawyers and UMG's lawyers linked up in front of the judge for a pre-trial conference, and lucky for us, there were reporters in the courtroom documenting the entire meeting, minute by minute. Lawbry broke down in tears, crying to the judge about Not Like Us. I'm joking, he was too busy filming his Nokia music video, copying Not Like Us, but the judge made some decisions today that probably made Lawbry happier than when he sees Sexy Red, because after all, he is the spiraling stepsister of Sexy Red. But Drake is a man who wears many hats, and above all else, he proudly embraces himself as the champagne petition padre, and his lawyers were popping champagne in the courtroom today, so we'll break all of it down. But first, please help me turn my frown upside down by taking the like and subscribe button to Pound Town. Now, Lawbries and Gentlegrams, before we get into it, I may have a big surprise for you guys. You guys have been asking for it. Well, not really, but I might give it to you guys anyways. The first ever Lawbries and Gentlegrams t-shirt. Now, look at this design. Tell me in the comments if you would wear this on a t-shirt. We got a goat in the pop-out concert outfit. We got another goat in the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show fit. And we got an owl ready for court. But these are all fictional characters. Drop a comment if you would wear this on a t-shirt. And I want to shout out to all the Labrianas out there, the beautiful queens tuning into these videos, because I'm very thankful for you guys. When I started this out, we had about 95% men watching and only 5% females in the audience. We bumped that up all the way to 22% females last month. So shout out to all you beautiful queens. And you guys were commenting saying that you want some female merch as well. So let me know in the comments how we can make this merch as gender inclusive, if that's the right term, as possible. My sister said she would wear it, but you guys let me know in the comments and let's carry on. So Lawbries and Gentlegrams, shout out to the Twitter account Inner City Press. They detailed the meeting between the judge and UMG and Drake's lawyers today down to a T. We're gonna break it all down. So they started off saying, okay, I'm headed into the Drake versus UMG case about Kendrick Lamar's diss track, Not Like Us. Will Judge Vargas grant UMG's motion to stay discovery? Inner City Press on the case aims to live tweet. Check out the thread below. So, just to fill you guys in, this was a pre-trial conference. What this means is essentially Lawbry's lawyers and Lucian's lawyers teamed up together to draft a letter to the judge where basically Lawbry's side was saying what they want from UMG's side, what they're accusing UMG of, the basis of their case, why this is defamation, why the judge should take this seriously, etc. And UMG's part of the letter was essentially saying all of Lawbry's claims are utter BS. We want to dismiss this entire case entirely. Entire case entirely. Yes, I have a way with words. But let's run a little context here. Obviously, Drake is accusing UMG of defamation for not only promoting Kendrick's song Not Like Us, but also publishing the song to begin with. Not only was Drake claiming that Kendrick was making defamatory false remarks about him being a PDF in the song, which UMG knew were false, he was also claiming that Kendrick was inciting calls to violence with the bars like wop 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 dot f him up. This is really in Drake's lawsuit. Drake's lawyers had attributed bars like that leading to the May 5th attack on Drake's home. If you guys don't know, literally the day after Not Like Us was released, Drake's home was attacked by a firearm. His security guard got injured. Drake was saying that Not Like Us led to that, and it led him fearing for his life. It led to his safety, his financial, and his reputational positioning all be compromised, and this was all at the hands of the evil UMG releasing and promoting this song. Drake, of course, also accused UMG of using bots on Spotify to promote the song, using payola, which is an illegal way to get your song played at radio, and a bunch of other wicked tactics, including bugging Apple Music so that when you say, "Hey Siri, play Certified Lover Boy," it starts playing Not Like Us. Now, there's some statements about that whole botting accusation that Drake made in this new update with the judge, so stay tuned for that. But just for a little more context, UMG basically came back out and said, Drake is full of crap. He knew what he was doing by engaging in this rap battle. He's mad that he lost. He made just as disgusting and vulgar accusations about Kendrick Lamar on a song called Family Matters, which we also released and promoted just like we did with Not Like Us. We did not play sides. We simply did our job by releasing a song from our artists like any record label should do. The song is simply hyperbole, which means exaggeration. No one believes that Drake is a PDF because of Not Like Us. These rumors existed long before Not Like Us, and they even cited a link to a video of Drake on stage with that A minor. You probably know the one I'm talking about, and that was all roped in to UMG's filing for a motion to dismiss. Essentially, their request for the judge to completely dismiss this case because it's based off a bunch of BS. Drake, on the other hand, was requesting 18 different documents from UMG, which included absolutely outrageous items like Kendrick Lamar's entire contract with UMG, every interaction that UMG had about licensing the song for Kendrick's Super Bowl halftime performance, for the Grammy Awards where he won 5 Grammys for the song, all communications and documents related to the marketing of the song by Interscope Records, which is a division of UMG that Kendrick releases his music through. And they basically wanted all the, internal documents and business communications between UMG and Kendrick Lamar. They wanted a first-hand look into all of Kendrick's business contracts, essentially. Pretty outrageous claims. And UMG essentially requested a motion to stay discovery. What this means is discovery is obviously when UMG would have to hand over to Drake's legal team all of those documents he was requesting, Kendrick Lamar's contracts. Workers within UMG would also have to get deposed, meaning they would have to be interviewed or questioned by Drake's legal team. So that's what's called discovery. And UMG was basically saying, we have filed a motion to dismiss this case. We want the judge to look at this and say, kaputs, it's done. In between time, we do not want to continue with discovery until the judge gives us their final verdict on whether or not we're going to throw this case out in the garbage. Basically, until the judge says, hey, we're keeping this case moving or we're throwing it out. We don't want to do any of the depositions, go into discovery at all. We don't want to give Drake any info until we know for sure that this case will keep moving. Because again, UMG had requested to have the entire thing dismissed. So there's the motion to dismiss the entire case. And then there's also the motion to dismiss discovery, basically stopping Drake's legal team from doing any digging within UMG's internal documents before the judge decides whether or not this case is canceled or not. So that's what this pretrial conference is going to cover, as well as giving us an update into where Drake's legal team is at, if there's any new allegations they want to make, any allegations they want to take away from this case before it actually goes to trial. Or will the judge just throw the whole case out to begin with? Well, stay tuned and you will find out. So we're going to read along this Twitter thread from Inner City Press, who had a front row seat at this pretrial conference. So he says the lawyers are in place. 3 for Drake at the front table, 3 for UMG at the back. All rise. Judge Vargas said, I have a pending motion to stay discovery. Mr. Ransom, it's your motion. Mr. Ransom is the one representing UMG. Again, the motion to stay discovery basically means UMG's request to stop any discovery, any digging from Drake's team to happen. And the judge continues saying, there has been a change. Plaintiff, aka Drake, has essentially withdrawn his first complaint, saying there will be a second one. So no discovery. Basically, Drake has actually withdrawn the first complaint he made, aka all the allegations he made, and there's going to be a second one, a new one with either new allegations or some allegations taken out of the lawsuit completely. Now, on a quick side note, I could be getting some of this wrong. I'm not a lawyer, and I'm reading a reporter's notes who was in the courthouse, typing away as the judge was having all these interactions. So some of this stuff could be misread. We're going to get as accurate as we possibly could, and I'll come in with, any court documents that are publicly available from this meeting as well after we go through this thread. So the judge continues to UMG's lawyers. I don't generally stay discovery, aka I don't generally pause, discovery from happening from Drake's end. Why should I now? UMG's response was that Drake is amending speaks to the merits of our motion to dismiss. This song came out in May 2024. He didn't file until January 2025. There is no urgency. Basically, to translate into simple terms, UMG's lawyer, when they were asked, why should the judge pause the discovery, the information gathering section of the lawsuit, UMG's response was, the fact that Drake is changing his complaint shows that we have a good reason to try to get the whole case thrown out, aka our motion to dismiss. Also, the song in question, Not Like Us, was released way back in May 2024, but the lawsuit didn't get filed until January 2025, so it's not like this whole case is urgent. The judge responds by saying, it's your burden, aka it's your job to convince me. UMG responds by saying, they could have filed their amended complaint weeks ago. We would be burdened. They seek every document showing marketing for Kendrick Lamar. That's extraordinary. They seek compensation at Interscope, aka they could have filed the updated complaint weeks ago where they either remove or add in their new allegations, but they haven't done so yet. Meanwhile, they're asking us to hand over a massive amount of information, like every document related to marketing Kendrick Lamar, and that's way over the top. They also want details about how much people get paid at Interscope Record. That's a huge burden on us. They continue, defamation cases are different. There's the First Amendment. Discovery should be stayed. AKA, this is a defamation case, meaning Drake is accusing UMG of damaging his reputation, and those are special cases because of free speech rights under the First Amendment. So UMG thinks that the case should be paused before they have to hand over any documents or evidence. Then the judge turns to Drake's lawyer and says, "What do you think, Mr. Gottlieb?" And Mr. Gottlieb says, "The test is if the defendant has shown the complaint is unmeritorious." That is a crazy freaking word. Facially without merit. So essentially what he's saying is, the rule is, if UMG can show that Drake's complaint is obviously weak or doesn't have a legal leg to stand on, then maybe they could pause discovery. But they haven't shown that here. And again, remember, before this pretrial conference, before this meeting that we're going through right now, Drake's lawyer and UMG's lawyers teamed up to write a letter to the judge where, UMG did express their case and why they feel like this whole thing should be dismissed. Drake's lawyer is saying they haven't done enough to show that Drake's defamation complaint is weak enough to throw out. And Drake's lawyer continues saying, the motion to dismiss in this case is entirely an attack on the factual allegations in the complaint. UMG says no listener would believe the allegations in the Not Like Us song. So there are factual disputes, so discovery should not be stayed. Basically, Drake's lawyer is saying UMG's request to throw out the case, aka the motion to dismiss, is just arguing about the facts of what's in the complaint that Drake made. UMG saying nobody would take what the song says seriously, but that's factual disagreement, and courts usually say we need to move forward with discovery when that's the case. Basically, UMG is saying that no one's taking, him being a PDF from Not Like Us as a fact. Drake saying that, people are taking him being a PDF from Not Like Us. So because there's that disagreement, they need to move forward with, ripping apart Kendrick's contracts and getting, all of his marketing information. Seems crazy to me, but whatever. We'll continue going. Drake's lawyer continues saying, they have sent us a Rule 11 letter about only 5 paragraphs of our lengthy complaint. And this is where it gets interesting. About the use of streaming farms. We have exchanged letters. We intend to withdraw those, but it's tiny portion of our complaint. Basically saying Drake's legal team concocted this whole lawsuit. And remember, in it, we mentioned that one of the accusations was UMG was allegedly using bots to artificially boost the numbers on Spotify of Not Like Us. Drake's legal team is admitting here that they're actually planning to take those specific accusations out about the streaming farms. And that was a huge part about this case, right? Like the source that they used in the lawsuit was a DJ Akademiks live stream where this anonymous guy went on and said that Kendrick's manager, Anthony Soleil, had paid him to bot the song Not Like Us on its first day of release with about 30 million fake streams. That's what they used as a source in the lawsuit, even though Akademiks a couple days later came out and said he spoke to the head of Spotify, who said that is complete cap. Also, the LLC that anonymous guy said he was paid from to, put all the fake streams on Not Like Us, it's not a real LLC. So that accusation, that source was complete BS. And Drake's legal team is admitting here that they realize it was BS and they're taking out that part of the accusation from this lawsuit. Even though, some leaked messages between Drake and Big Akademiks' little minion, Grand Wizard Chat Guy, had leaked online. I have a whole video covering that. But one of the messages was that minion showing Drake that, oh, look at Akademiks' live stream, Kendrick's being exposed for bots. And Drake started calling Kendrick Body Boy or Bati Boy, if I, want to do it in the Toronto accent. But yeah, he was like, really, he's like, from now on, we're calling him Bati Boy. Like he was stuck, hung up on this allegation, even though it was complete cap. And now Drake's lawyers are in court admitting that they knew it was cap. But what they're saying is basically UMG sent Drake's legal team a formal warning letter, aka a Rule 11 letter, complaining that 5 paragraphs in their complaint were being removed about the streaming farms. They were planning to take those out, but Drake's legal team is saying that's only a small part of their big case that they have. UMG is saying that's a big enough part of the case that you're trying to remove to where we should not have to now go into discovery mode and you have to rip up all our contracts. Drake's legal team is saying, nah, you're following through. You're giving us all your contracts just because we're taking this small part of the lawsuit out about the streaming farms and the bots. we're still going to proceed. We still want to see all of Kendrick's contracts. So let's keep going on. But before we do, Lobbies and Gentlegrams, I want to tell you guys about something that, unlike Drake, a bunch of you guys have been telling me you've been Akademiks winning some free cash from playing mobile games. So I want to put all you guys on to something that almost seems too good to be true. All right, let me give you a little glimpse into my life. When I'm not making this content for you guys, I have a disgusting addiction to my phone. My daily screen time is higher than Drake on that album cover, higher than Snoop off the edibles. So if you guys suffer that same addiction as me, I want to put you onto something that's going to change your life. FreeCash.com is a program that partners with mobile games that are looking for more users to play their games, and they will literally pay you to play their games for free. All you got to do is sign up using the QR code you see on the screen or using the link in the description of this video. You make an account super easy. All you got to do is put in your email, create a password, verify your email, and then you're good to go. And they got a bunch of games. My favorite is the Monopoly Go because we're always on the go trying to make some money. Once you make an account, you just click the game you want to play, follow the directions that they give you. The directions are super easy. Usually you just got to download the game and start playing. So it's about time you put that phone addiction to good use. Again, use the QR code you see on the screen or the link in my description. Create an account and you could start making more than $150 just to play a game on your phone. So again, Drake's legal team is basically saying UMG contacted us stating that out of our entire lawsuit, one part is not valid. The invalid part is the fact that we accused UMG of using streaming farms, aka bots, to artificially boost the streaming numbers of Not Like Us. We acknowledge that that part is not valid. We're going to take out that part of the lawsuit, but that's only a tiny piece of the entire lawsuit, and because of it, UMG is trying to throw out the entire lawsuit. But that's not right because it's one small piece to the big puzzle of UMG, conspiring with this song to destroy Drake's reputation. So Drake's lawyer continues saying, UMG's motion cites previous songs, so we intend to amend to address those, and the Super Bowl halftime show. It was more defamation, and they continued to promote the song after they've been informed about the harm. Essentially saying UMG is trying to throw out the lawsuit and they're bringing up older songs to do that. That would be Family Matters, right? Because in UMG's motion to dismiss the entire lawsuit, they stated Drake also made calls to violence in Family Matters. He made horrible allegations against Kendrick that could also defame him and his fiancée and their entire marriage, including Dave Free, his manager. And for that reason, UMG felt like the lawsuit should be thrown out because Drake was, being hypocritical, right? So Drake's legal team says, we're going to update our complaint, aka amend it, to respond to those allegations UMG made about, them bringing up older songs like Family Matters. And we're also going to include the Super Bowl halftime show in our new complaint, our new lawsuit, because that made things worse for UMG, according to Drake's legal team. And Drake's legal team thinks that continuing to promote the song, even after they were told that it was harmful, is more defamation. So, plastering it on the Grammys, plastering it at the Super Bowl. Now Kendrick and SZA are going on tour. Kendrick will most very likely perform that song. Drake is saying they're continuing to play the game and continuing to defame Drizzler's name. Drake's lawyer continues saying, calling UMG's lawyer, I believe he's referring to UMG's lawyer, where he says, my friend claims our requests are overboard, but it's no different than any other corporate or institutional defendant. An NFL case had 40 defendants. Here, it's a single defendant, requests generally limited to 1 year. So essentially, Drake's lawyer is saying, UMG says we're asking for way too much information in our discovery phase. Because again, he's asking for Kendrick's contracts, all the, communication with the NFL, all the communication within Interscope to promote Not Like Us, and all of Kendrick's music, not just Not Like Us. So, they are really asking for way too much info. UMG, I believe in this case, is right, but I'm not a lawyer again. So Drake's lawyer is saying, UMG thinks we're asking for too much in the discovery. But honestly, our requests are totally normal. This is how it usually works when you're suing a massive corporation like UMG. And Drake's lawyer says, I've seen bigger cases, like one involving the NFL, where there were 40 different people or companies that were being sued all at once. I'm assuming it was also for defamation. And he's saying, in our case, in Drake's case, it's just one company. And we're asking only for documents covering 1 year. That's reasonable. AKA, they're only asking for documents within UMG, within Kendrick's contract, from the last year. Drake's lawyer continues, we'd agree to this court's standard protective order. Defamation cases have an actual malice standard, and we far more than met that. But there's no separate discovery rule in defamation cases. They are not a newspaper. They sell music. AKA, we're fine with using the court's usual protective order, which helps keep private documents from being made public during the case. In defamation lawsuits, we have to prove, quote unquote, actual malice, which means the other side knew what they said was false, or didn't care if it was true, and we've already shown more than enough evidence for that. AKA, we're fine with keeping, all the documents that we're requesting private to the case. Like, we're not going to go ahead and leak Kendrick's contracts to the public. We just need it for our own case, for our own discovery. And now typically in defamation cases where you're accusing one party of, defaming you, you have to prove that there was actual malice, which means that, in this case, Drake would have to prove UMG knew the allegations in Not Like Us weren't true and didn't care and still ended up promoting it. And Drake's team is basically saying that they already did that and they proved that UMG knew they were false, but still kept going, even though UMG, when they filed the motion to dismiss the case, they showed that these PDF allegations were made against Drake long before Not Like Us. And Drake even talked about in Tailor Made saying, talk about me liking young girls, buddy. Drake's legal team also says, there's no special rule that limits how we gather information just because it's a defamation case. UMG isn't a news organization, they're a music company, so the rules are the same. The judge replies by saying, you say there are 16 RFP, requests for production, pending. Any third-party discovery? And Drake's lawyer answers by saying, we've served 3 third-party subpoenas and we are trying to serve a 4th. They will go forward if discovery is not stayed. So basically the judge was asking, you've sent out 16 requests for production, basically asking UMG to hand over documents. Have you asked anyone outside the company for info? And Drake's lawyer says, yeah, we've sent out subpoenas to 3 third parties, aka people or companies that aren't directly in the lawsuit. And we know that they filed petitions against, Spotify, iHeartMedia. They roped those third party companies into this lawsuit initially. So that's possibly who they're referring to when they say, we've requested subpoenas from third parties. And they also say they're working on a 4th third party to request information from. And Drake's lawyer then says, these will move forward if the judge does not pause discovery. So if the judge lets Drake's team collect all this information, then, they're going to go after all these different companies, corporations, even outside of UMG, to really try to gather as much info as they could to see if Kendrick was, bodying the song, doing payola, doing anything kind of sketchy to basically promote it and publish it. Drake's lawyer said, we also intend to depose a number of people. And the judge said, you propose fact discovery closing in October. Drake's lawyer says, it's fast, but we are facing harm and want to move forward. So essentially, Drake's lawyer is saying we plan to interview people, aka we plan on deposing people. The judge says, you want all of this fact gathering to finish by October? And Drake's lawyer says, yeah, that's a tight timeline, but Drake is being very harmed by this song, so we want to keep things moving quickly. Then the judge responds saying, in terms of the motion to dismiss schedule, you'll amend when? Drake's lawyer says April 16th. So basically that's, the updated complaint, right? Because they're going to remove the allegations about, the streaming farms for Not Like Us, all the bots. Drake's legal team is going to remove that. And they're probably going to include more allegations about UMG licensing the song for the Super Bowl. And when do they plan to file this new complaint, this updated lawsuit? Drake's legal team says by April 16th. So we'll definitely touch on that updated complaint once April 16th rolls around. Then the judge turns to UMG's lawyers and says, then they move to dismiss by when? UMG lawyer says, we'll have 3 weeks, then 14 for opposition, 7 days for reply. So basically the judge is asking, when will UMG file their motion to dismiss the case? Once Drake's legal team drafts up this new complaint, where they remove the streaming bot accusations and when they, potentially add in new allegations, maybe tied to the Super Bowl. The judge is asking, when will UMG file their motion to dismiss this new complaint that Drake's legal team is drafting up by April 16th? And UMG's lawyer says, we'll need 3 weeks to file it. Then Drake's team gets 2 weeks, 14 days to respond, and we'll have 7 days to reply after that. So just a whole lot of back and forth incoming, basically, as Drake, makes these changes to his lawsuit. But again, UMG has already put in a motion to dismiss the original lawsuit. So the judge is now going to give their final verdict on whether or not, they're tossing this case out in the trash today. So they go all rise, and the judge goes, Drake is a top charting rap artist. He claims Not Like Us is intended to convey the message that plaintiff, aka Drake, is a PDF. There are pleadings too from April to May 28th. UMG argues discovery is premature and sought to adjourn. Essentially, Drake is a top rap artist. He's claiming Not Like Us is saying he's a PDF. That's a very serious accusation. There have been legal filings between April and May 28th in the next couple of weeks, like we just touched on. And UMG is saying it's too early to start sharing documents and info, aka for Drake's team to start going into discovery mode, tearing up Kendrick's contracts and all that. and UMG wants to push everything back until the judge truly decides if the case is getting dismissed, and depending on what Drake's legal team conjures up in their new complaint. The judge continues, discovery is not usually stayed, aka normally I don't pause the discovery period, and I even have past cases that show that, but I have considerable discretion to do it if I find good cause, an unmeritorious claim, burden and unfair prejudice. UMG seeks to dismiss all 3 counts. I cannot assess the strength. So essentially, the judge has the power, if there's really good reason, to pause the discovery period, pause all the information gathering from Drake's legal team to UMG. AKA, if the lawsuit looks weak, the judge will say, okay, discovery is paused till we come to some sort of conclusion. Maybe Drake's legal team, redrafts the lawsuit, adds in some new accusations, or maybe we dismiss it totally. But the judge continues saying, I cannot assess the strength. I cannot find on that basis that a stay of discovery is warranted. Here, there is only one defendant, which weighs against staying discovery. UMG can object to individual requests. The motion to stay discovery is denied. So essentially, the judge is basically saying UMG is trying to get the entire case thrown out, all 3 parts, but the judge can't tell yet how strong UMG's argument is to get the case thrown out. And based on what they've seen, there's no good reason to pause the discovery period, aka Drake getting info from UMG. Plus, there's only one company being sued, which is obviously UMG, which makes it more manageable rather than if it was Drake, filing this defamation case against a bunch of different companies. And they continue saying, if UMG thinks any of the requests are too much, they can object to specific ones later. So in the meantime, the judge is saying no to stopping the discovery period, giving Drake that first W he's had in this entire lawsuit. Because now, if I'm reading correctly, he can go and read through all of Kung Fu Kenny's contracts. And so aside from Drake's legal team filing, a new complaint, maybe taking out some allegations, adding in some new ones, we know that's going to happen by April 16th. There's also a date for where the judge will hold a hearing to talk about UMG's motion to dismiss the entire case. That's going to be on June 30th at 2 p.m. The judge also says, 6 months for discovery seems aggressive if 56 people were disclosed and might be deposed, so confer and file a new proposal. Essentially saying the judge thinks 6 months for the discovery period seems like it's too fast, especially if, 56 people might have to be questioned under oath. So both sides should talk it over and send a new plan for how long discovery should take. AKA, Drake wants a lot of people doing a lot of snitching. It's going to take a long time, more than 6 months. So UMG and Drake have to get together and decide how long this will really take. In the meantime, June 30th, the judge will sit down with these lawyers again and determine if UMG has a valid case for actually getting the whole entire lawsuit dismissed completely. So what did we learn today, Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams? I'm really calling you guys Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams now because we're on a law vibe here. If you stuck around this late in the video, drop a like, but also we're becoming mini lawyers here. This is some good legal training. Essentially, what this all means is that Drake is now allowed, the judge granted his legal team permission to go rip through Kendrick's contracts, depose different people at UMG, gather all the information he needs to build his case up. He's also got to come back with, a redrafted version of his lawsuit by April 16th, and UMG then has to go sit in front of the judge on June 30th to, make their case for why this whole thing should be tossed in the garbage. Now, also, obviously, one of the biggest takeaways from this entire back and forth with Drake's legal team, UMG's legal team, and the judge is that Drake's legal team is planning to amend his lawsuit and take out the allegation of Kendrick or UMG using bots to artificially boost the numbers of Not Like Us. And we already saw this, right? Because Spotify a couple of weeks ago actually went through all the songs on their database and removed streams that were illegitimate, aka botted streams, fake streams, whatever you want to call them. None of Kendrick's songs were affected, meaning that when Spotify went through their whole catalog of music that's on that app, they determined that there was no actual bots on any of the Kendrick music. Now, could they be somehow coerced with UMG and, hiding this because they're incentivized to not show that one of their biggest artists on their platform with one of the most monthly listeners right now on the entire platform, Kendrick literally broke the record for being the rapper with the most amount of monthly listeners in the platform's history. It might be a bad look if, the most listened to rapper on their platform has a bunch of bots on their page. So if you want to go OV-Ho conspiracy mode, you might say, okay, well, maybe they'll be coerced or incentivized into not exposing Kendrick's bots, especially with this case going on. But now we're seeing Drake's legal team is likely planning to take out that allegation completely from their lawsuit, stating or emphasizing that it's cap. However, to clarify, they haven't actually taken that part out yet. We're only going to find out on April 16th if they will take out that allegation that they don't believe Not Like Us was botted. And you have to ask yourself, right? Like, if they take out that allegation, right, and they've already dropped iHeartMedia from this lawsuit, essentially, what is their basis of defamation at this point? The simple fact that UMG published the song? UMG's argument is obviously like, look, yeah, we published this song from Kendrick Lamar, but not only is it hyperbole, aka exaggerated, like, you know, him talking about PDFs and Not Like Us doesn't mean it's our fault that, you know, the world now thinks Drake might be a PDF. But there's also the fact that, you know, we published diss songs from Drake where he was also defaming Kendrick's name as well. So, you know, we did the same thing on both sides. We didn't just play one side. That's why UMG wants this whole thing tossed in the trash. Now, if Drake does end up winning this, right, and it's proven that Not Like Us defamed him, UMG knew these allegations were false, they still publish this, and the judge decides that, you know, it was in fact defamation for UMG to publish, simply release Not Like Us to the world, what would Drake want in return? Would he want money from UMG for his reputational damage? Would he want the song to be removed from streaming platforms completely? Would he want, you know, royalties from the song? You kind of have to ask yourself these questions, right? Because what is Drake's real end goal here? For a while, he was acting like he's doing this for the smaller artists, right? The artists who don't have a chance against these giant corporations because the giant corporations just use a bunch of bots to artificially boost the numbers of the biggest artists, so it makes the smaller artists have a harder time to climb up the charts, right? But if he's throwing out that whole part of the lawsuit that talks about Kendrick using fake streams on Not Like Us, then what case does he actually have to fight against smaller artists? The fact that, you know, if a smaller artist gets in a battle with a bigger artist, then that bigger artist can defame them in a diss song? You have to remember the type of precedent that Drake is setting by filing a lawsuit like this, right? And who actually comes out the winner? Is it the smaller artist? Is it Drake? I'm saying if Drake wins this lawsuit, how does that affect the dynamics of the music industry going forward? He's not going to take down this entire corporation, right? The most he could ask for is maybe a couple $1 million from UMG. Like, his reputational damage was not worth more than, at the very most, a couple dozen $1 billion, because Drake as a brand, as a corporation, is not worth more than a couple $100 million. And, you know, the reputational damage, you could prove it by songs like Nokia still climbing the charts, was not enough to say that, you know, Drake lost 50% of his fan base, not even probably 30%. So if you're doing the math like that and the judge, you know, I'm just talking in fantasy land here, if the judge somehow decides UMG destroyed, you know, 20% of Drake's brand's value, you'd have to assess the damages. You'd have to say, okay, Drake's brand is valued today at X amount, let's say $100 million, right? And he was getting a bunch of streams before. He's not streaming as well now. You could see there's a direct correlation between the release of Not Like Us destroying his reputation because he's a PDF. He lost all these brand deals now. You know, let's say he lost out on $30 million, something like that. Is that going to be the outcome of this lawsuit, that UMG has to cough up, you know, an amount like that in the dozens of millions? Is it going to be that UMG has to take down the song from streaming platforms completely? Because if they could convince the judge that this song directly made the world think that Drake is a PDF and it's defamatory, UMG is causing defamation against Drake, the only way to truly reprimand that, if that's the right word, is to remove the song from streaming platforms. Stop publishing the song. Obviously, the lawyers at UMG don't think it would ever come to that, right? Because if they did, then they already would have stopped licensing the song, right? They wouldn't have given it to the Super Bowl for Kendrick to perform. They wouldn't have played it during the Grammy speech. But we did also see during that Grammy speech, right? Initially, when Kendrick went up to win the award, they were playing Not Like Us. As he got up to accept the trophy, like, the whole crowd was chanting that A minor line, and the music was playing in the background as he went up to accept the award. But on YouTube, initially it was posted with the music playing, and a couple of weeks later, the music was actually removed from his acceptance speech. So there's something a little bit weird going on there. And we know from this pretrial conference with the judge that Drake's lawyers did contact third parties outside UMG. Maybe they contacted the Grammys to say, hey, you don't want to be roped in this. Like, we suggest you remove Not Like Us from any videos published on your own website, your YouTube channel, whatever, that actually play Not Like Us. If not, you could be involved in, you know, this defamation case. There's a lot of weird things going on, right? And it's really, again, like, you have to think, what is Drake's end goal in this entire thing? What is he trying to prove, and what is he trying to gain if he actually wins? And on an even crazier side, if he loses, what does he stand to lose, right? Like, does he have to pay UMG for putting them through this entire trial? Does it just get removed? They shake hands and walk away? Will Drake have to collab with Sexy Red for the rest of his life? I said in a previous video, I think this is Drake's move at trying to get out of his contract with UMG completely and not re-sign with them. We know he already re-signed his OVO label to Sony's record label, which is separate from UMG. And it's interesting because PARTYNEXTDOOR is obviously signed to the OVO label. So when Drake released that new Sexy Sleepy Lullaby Love Song album with PND, it was kind of a weird release. It was a joint release. UMG released it because Drake is signed to UMG, but then Sony released it as well. It was distributed by both of them because PND is signed to OVO, which is signed to Sony. Now, there's a couple different songs that were pushed on radio that were pushed in general as, you know, the single of the album. You had the song Somebody to Love Me, which was pushed as the PARTYNEXTDOOR song. So Sony was the one sending that to radio, putting it on the playlist on Spotify, putting all the investment behind it. And then initially you had Give Me a Hug, which was a solo Drake song. That was UMG doing the marketing on that. We saw that song flop, so all the OVO conspiracy theorists were saying, you know, Drake is in this battle with UMG, so they're really going to try to tear him down now. They're going to teach him a lesson. They're going to really suppress this song. But Nokia is also a solo Drake song, right? So any promotion that happens with that song, if it's sent to radio, if it's pushed on playlists, if it's pushed, you know, through Spotify's homepages, if they pay Spotify to, you know, add some extra promotion to it, which is a common thing that artists do, that would all be done by UMG since it's a solo Drake song. And on a side note, I think it's so funny that like the two songs that, you know, Drake knew were destined to be the biggest songs off this album, he purposely left PND off them. Give Me a Hug and Nokia. Somebody to Love Me or Somebody Who Loves Me, that's an R&B song. Like that's not going to go crazy on the pop charts and all that, right? And he's shooting a music video for Nokia that's a solo song. Well, actually, there's a feature on it who's uncredited, which I also find crazy. Like he had a whole separate artist singing the hook on that song and didn't even put him like as the feature artist on the track. But that's a story for another video. Essentially, this project was released from both PND's label and from Drake's label, right? You could see UMG is still behind the success of Drake because they're still pushing that Nokia song. That Nokia song is still rising. It's not being suppressed by the evil wrath of Lucian Grange and UMG. So how much of a case can Drake truly make for UMG purposely trying to tarnish his career or suppress his music? On a side note, I would love to have like a crazy Drake stan on this channel and debate them. Like, I'm very open to that. If somehow, somewhere, a Drake stan is watching this, or like there's some, you know, the equivalent of Rapaholics, but like for Drake fans on YouTube, I would love to debate that person live on this channel. But yeah, ultimately, I think like Drake's overall purpose with this lawsuit is to try and, you know, gain leverage to just basically wiggle out of his contract with UMG. Because I don't think there's no renegotiating with UMG after something like this, right? Whether Drake wins or loses, I think there's too much bad blood here to renegotiate, right? But again, we saw him strategically move his OVO label to Sony Records. So that's a whole other imprint. I don't think Drake would go the independent route. Like, he needs that big marketing machine behind him. I mean, he doesn't fully, but we saw with his plot twist songs, when he kind of released them independently with that, you know, lack of promotion, they didn't perform as well, right? Now we're seeing, again, with the backing of a major record label, his Sexy Sleepy Lullaby Love Song album didn't perform half bad. I think he has too much of an ego to let his numbers take a hit in order to go independent, and I think he knows his value as a brand goes up a lot if we continue to see him at the top of the charts. In order to do that, you need the big machine. I think he's going to use this lawsuit to wiggle out of that UMG contract and sign with Sony. Obviously, if he wins the lawsuit, he'll have a lot more leverage to get out of his contract in a way that's more desirable for him. But even if he loses the lawsuit, his catalog is too big for no label to be incentivized to sign him. Even if it now comes with the unprecedented liability that, you know, he might go after them in a defamation case if he agrees to participate in a rap battle and doesn't like the outcome of it, there's still, the numbers are too big for them to not be incentivized to re-sign Drake to a new contract, especially with, you know, his OVO sweatshop with him. Anyways, we'll see. Kanye, in the meantime, is talking crazy. Obviously, more about Drake. He's absolutely obsessed with him. We'll touch on a whole video on Kanye because he has some crazy crap coming out, whether it's with tweets or music. He's doing a lot right now, especially with Akademiks. But he said on Twitter saying, "How I hate Drake and I'm Team Drake at the same time. Life is funny like that. It's the weird thing where I feel closest to Drake out of anybody in rap." He also said that the intro track off his Bully album, Preacher Man, he tried to send that to Drake, And Drake was just like, you know, I hate to crush your dreams, but it's not happening, buddy. But Kanye says that he thinks he will still do a collaboration tape at one point with Drake. And it's so crazy to me, like, you know, this is kind of on a tangent, but Drake came in the game like idolizing Kanye. Like, there's a clip of him from 2009 working on his debut album, Thank Me Later, and he was devastated because Kanye wasn't giving him any more beats or any more verses. He says he was too busy working on, you know, My Beautiful Twisted Fantasy at the time. But then he did end up giving Nicki Minaj a verse for her debut album, which came out around the same time. And Drake was like damn near crying in the studio that Kanye wouldn't give him any more, you know, music. And now we fast forward 15 years later, and it's Kanye crying that Drake won't give him any music. He's doing an interview with Big Mac and Akademiks talking about how Drake needs to be writing for him because, you know, he needs to be the one in charge leading the pack, comparing himself, you know, to God. But at the same time, you know, damn near bowing down to Drake, being like, you know, you're the closest thing I have in rap. Like, I need you. He's more obsessed with Drake than his own wife and kids. But that's all I got for you guys today. So let me know in the comments, do you like the merch? Should I drop a t-shirt for the Lobries and Gentlegrams? Also, the Lobries and Gentle Ladies. Shout out to you guys. Over 22% of the audience is now ladies. I love that. I love to see that. So tell a friend to tell a friend. For this video, this is the end, but I'm sure in just a day or two, I'll drop another Lobry video and we will reprimand. And until then, I will catch you guys in the next one.